Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 547 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our sixth book just came out. It's called I'm So Beautiful, It's Ridiculous: Unleashing and Promoting Strength, Self-Worth, and Real Sisterhood. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes& and Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there's nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, my dad had many different careers over his lifetime, but he has this incredible gift of remembering every single joke he's ever heard his entire life. While serving in the Israeli army, the others in his platoon asked him to do stand-up comedy for them in order to pass the time, which everybody enjoyed tremendously. And even to this day, you can challenge him to make a joke on any topic. Pick a topic like the cemetery. He'll tell you dozens of jokes about that. People are dying to get in. He's got it stored away in his mind, ready to deliver at any moment. So, humor is something that brings people together. And I wanted to talk more about that on the show today. Bill Williams, 30 years ago, was faced with the problem keeping in touch with all of his sales staff that was spread throughout the Midwest. The internet and the email were so new, so he decided these new technologies might actually solve his problem. And the staff all had email, but of course, they never checked it. Sound familiar? So he decided to send out the thought of the day. Some of these were humorous, others were just interesting facts or stories. And guess what? It worked. They started to read their emails every day and they shared these stories with their clients and they asked to get on the distribution list. And then, of course, it just grew. And today, decades later, hundreds of folks across the nation and overseas are getting these daily missives. So I think there is something that we can learn here from all of this experiment, and it's going to help today's college students to move forward. So let us welcome to the show, Bill. Welcome and welcome for joining us. We appreciate that.
Thank you for the invitation, Mike. Glad to be able to be here.
Hey, it's fantastic to have you on the show. I think you have some great information to share with our college students today. So I'm going to jump right in. You decided on Texas Tech for your undergraduate experience. And I'm wondering, why did you decide that Texas Tech was the right place for you to go?
Well, I got to tell you, I grew up in a military household living on Air Force bases and was fantastically involved in aviation. I got my pilot's license in high school. And so I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And I decided on New Mexico A&M because they had a work study program with work 6 months at White Sands Missile Range and go to school for 6 months. And I applied for that. And then at the last minute, I got turned down. And I lived in Lubbock, and Texas Tech was there. So I joined the uh, engineering school. Fortunately, it only took about a semester or so before I discovered I really hated math, and engineering probably wasn't my strong point.
Well,
So
listen, it happens. It happens to the best of us. I have a degree in
I
accounting, and I'm certainly not doing accounting today.
Well, I tried a bunch of different majors, and after my fifth year as an undergraduate, I was sitting in the union one day and talking to a friend on the faculty, and he said, "You know, I was looking at your transcript, and you've got enough hours to graduate this semester." And I jumped up, grabbed him by the collars, and said, "Great, in what?" And he said, "If you take three more classes in speech, you can graduate as a speech major." And since broadcasting was in speech and I was managing the radio station, oh, I could do that. So I wound up with a BA in in speech.
Wow, what a story. I love it. Fantastic. Well, it makes a lot of sense. And speaking of speech and broadcasting, 30 years ago, you had this problem of reaching your staff that was spread all across the Midwest, and you had trouble engaging them. And I think, this the same problem is happening today, by the way. I don't think we've gotten any further. People still don't read their emails, and I end up having to call them or figure out ways to get them to open up their email. So, how did you come to this conclusion 30 years ago that email humor was the way to fix this problem?
Well, if you go back 30 years and you can remember, not only was the internet new, but most of us were still carrying a pager and a pocket full of quarters and trying to find a payphone to where we could return calls. Uh, what passes as cell phones were about the size of a brick, or they were plugged into your car. And so basically, email was really the only way that we could keep in touch with folks effectively. So we could just give it a shot, and it happened to work.
Hmm, fascinating. So where does all of this content come from for all of this email humor?
Well, for the first couple of years, basically it was stuff I was creating or could find, and then people started saying, "Hey, would you like to try this?" And then people started sending me stuff, and more people sent me stuff, and now I've got probably 1,000 that I've never even used yet. So all of my emails will give you the name of the person who contributed it. And in many cases where they're repeats, will also give you the date that it first appeared. So a lot of things are 2005 or something like that. So,
Wow, that is just incredible. Look at you. And you have plenty of content now for the next 3 years at least. So that's good to know.
well, I've got a book out. The first book came out January 1st, entitled 20 Years of Internet Humor, Volume 1, because the publishers have said I've got enough material there for 10 to 12 volumes.
Oh my
So
gosh.
there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about how your life has changed as a result of this email distribution list. I mean, you talked about the book, and that's certainly one thing that's new, but I'm sure there had to be some connections that you've made over the years with people that you never expected to connect with.
Not so much new connections, but keeping in touch with folks that I've known for years.
Mm,
Some people are on my list I went to high school with. I've got a bunch of college friends on it. But then I've also got clients and literally hundreds of people I've never met and I don't know other than as an email address. So it hasn't changed my life all that much, except that it keeps me busy. My wife says, "When are you going to stop that?" And no, I just enjoy it too much because I do really enjoy the responses that I get from people.
yeah. Okay.
I've
Well,
never made a dime at it till this book came out, and it's new enough to where I still haven't made a dime from it.
well, hopefully that'll change now that the book is out and more people are going to start reading it. So I think you're definitely on the right track. Your experience through life, I think, is really interesting. And I think that there's something that the college students can learn from here because you've been on staff for three public television stations, two public radio stations, and many of our listeners are trying to get the attention of television stations and radio stations for all the good community service work that they're doing in their local communities as members of fraternities and sororities. So if you were them, you're a college student, you're doing good work in your community, how would you go about getting more positive PR on these forms of media if you were a college student?
Well, what I would do, because I was manager of a program, I'm sorry, manager of a radio station on campus and a program director for a television station on campus, actually two different campuses. And what I found is that the students never bothered to ever tell us what they're doing. We never got news releases. We had to go out and find what's going on. Uh, you could go in and volunteer because most of these stations are loving to have volunteers. And if you volunteer, you've got a great in to put whatever on the air that you want.
Mm,
So it's a great place to learn something, have fun, and get your word out. But you got to be in touch. You got to talk to them. That's the big kicker.
yeah. I think you're on the right track right there. I mean, that's exactly how I did it as a college student. I was also frustrated as a fraternity member that we were all, not just my organization, but other student organizations, doing great work, but nobody knew about it. And so yeah, I think you're right. We weren't doing a good job of communicating that to anybody else. So I told one of the guys in my chapter to go and volunteer for the school newspaper to work as a reporter. And I said, it's going to be
Absolutely.
great experience for you on your resume. That's how I sold it to him. And sure enough, he went to the local paper, to the school newspaper. He got the job as a volunteer reporter, and he had a section in the paper that he needed to fill every week. That was his responsibility to fill it with some content. They didn't care what was printed there. And so he said, okay, this is going to be the positive news for PR for all fraternities and sororities. And he had a schedule that he sent out to all the fraternity and sorority chapters and gave them a schedule on when their news article was due. And they would submit the news article to him, he would print it, and every week there would be a different positive story from a different student organization that was printed. But all of this was intentional. None of this happened by accident.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. My compliments on that.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be very intentional about all of this. And, here's the other thing. They don't really teach how to create a press release. You mentioned a press release, and that's real easy for you and I because, we've done a million of them. But the nice thing is with ChatGPT and AI that's out there, you can actually just create a summary of whatever it is your student organization did. Type it up in Word of like what happened, what was the day, the time, who you worked with, what was the impact, etc. Put that, cut and paste that into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will give you out a press release. If you ask it for a press release, it will put it in the press release format that you need, and then you can send that press release to the local paper, to the school paper, and it's much easier for them to then use that in order to write the story. Am I right?
You're absolutely right, and they would love it because they're dying for things like that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I really agree with all of that stuff. All right, so
And
hopefully
then don't forget the broadcast, not just the local papers, but the campus radio station and television stations too, because I can honestly say I never had a student come in and say, "Hey, would you publicize this?"
oh,
Ever.
that's criminal. I mean, that's borderline criminal right there that you're working on a college campus and nobody is coming to you with news. So, absolutely right. The newspaper, the radio, the television station, all of those things, whether it be locally in your town or at the school, those are all places where you can send that press release over to. And I'm telling you, they are dying for stories. They need content, and that is their
Absolutely.
source for content. And so, you can get easily on the radio, on television if you employ these ideas that we're talking about right here. Now, you've also had your own communications consulting business in Washington, D.C. for 20 years. You were a registered lobbyist. And it seems like, I'm watching the news today, and we have some very angry people right now in the United States in terms of what's going on in Washington, D.C. And now we're having voters going to town halls and they're expressing their frustrations on our elected leaders. So, if you were a college student right now, what do you think is the best way to bring change to leadership in both parties in Washington, D.C.? Because I think they both have room for improvement.
Mike, you've just put the word on it, is go to the meetings and vote. Now, when I was in college, we were too young to vote. We couldn't vote. But now college students have the vote and they are now a block that could definitely make changes, but they've got to do it. Okay, they've got to get involved. They've got to let their feelings be known and let their feelings be known strongly. And then when the time comes, actually get out and vote.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, we can't take that for granted. The college students absolutely positively have to get engaged. They have to vote. They have to go to the meetings. They have to read up on what's going on. And, that's where real change, if you look at the history of the United States, it all starts on college campuses. I mean, that's where real change starts and movements begin. So, to the college students who are listening to us right now, it starts with you. It really, really does start with you. And just look at history and you'll see what I'm saying is absolutely true. Now, Bill, you spent 5 years as a member of something called the $1 Million Roundtable. What in the world is the $1 Million Roundtable, and how does that concept apply to college students?
Well, the $1 Million Roundtable is a group of financial planning and insurance professionals. And in order to qualify for that, you have to have done a certain amount of business. And basically, that winds up being about the top 1/10 of 1% of all the people in the business worldwide. And so basically, it meant that I was doing a lot of business. Okay. And I'm still in that business. So it's one of those things where whatever your profession, you have to get involved in the organizations that those people in those professions join and participate in. Because if I hadn't joined the $1 Million Roundtable or, applied for it, I never would have been a member.
Hmm.
Okay. But I know a lot of people who could have qualified, but they just never got around to asking.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson for college students to learn. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have been there and done that. Maybe they're retired today, and they're great resources in terms of asking advice. So, the best thing that I can convey to a college student right now is find those mentors, find those people that have been there and who have done that, and get in with them. And I'll tell you what, with LinkedIn, you could pretty much reach just about anybody right now. Just send them a message, let them know you're a college student and you're looking for advice on whatever it is that you're interested in. That could be real estate, it could be insurance, whatever, financial matters, financial literacy. Just reach out. And I tell you what, most people are going to say yes if you reach out to them and ask for 15 minutes, 20 minutes on Zoom or a phone call. They'll probably say yes. It might not be today because they might be busy, but a week from now, 2 weeks from now, they will say yes to your meeting because you're a college student and you don't have anything to sell them. You're just trying to learn how they got there. And a lot of people
Absolutely.
like to talk about themselves. Am I right, Bill?
Absolutely. Look what we're doing right now.
It's
And I'm on
true.
LinkedIn. Hey, give me shout.
Yeah, I mean, go and connect with Bill Williams on LinkedIn, and he'd be happy to provide whatever expertise he can and maybe help connect you to the right person if he's not the right person. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help you, especially if they are, let's say, alumni of the university that you went to, if they're in your fraternity or sorority, even if it's from another chapter, they're glad to connect with you. Think about what industries you want to be in, what companies you want to work for, what is the job title that you seek. And those are the people that you want to reach out to on LinkedIn and ask them for 15 minutes on a Zoom session. You're just a college student trying to learn more about what they do. I'm telling you, they will accept because you have absolutely nothing to sell them. We don't like to be sold to. That's something that's a little bit unpleasant for us. But if you have nothing to sell us, then we will help. Most people truly, truly want to help you, right?
If
So
you don't ask, it doesn't happen.
that's right. I mean, you got to ask. I mean, the worst thing they could do, the absolute worst thing they could do is say no. And I'm telling you, if you're a college student, that's probably only going to happen to you. I'm guessing maybe one out of 99 tries that they're going to say no. Most people will say yes. Again, it might not be today, but somewhere in the future, they will get you scheduled. So that's really good stuff. Now, Bill, you're also a licensed registered investment advisor. So the young college students right now, they're broke. You and I were both broke as college students too. So they don't have a lot of extra income at the moment. So what strategy would you employ if you were a college student trying to build wealth long term?
Well, I wish I knew then what I know now. And the most important thing people can be aware of is something called the Rule of 72. And the Rule of 72 says money at 1% will take 72 years to double. So if you have money in the bank that's getting 0.5%, it's going to take that money 128 years to double. Okay. On the other hand, if you had a mutual fund that was paying 18%, and they're out there, it only takes 4 years to double. So I tell students, and I talk at high schools frequently, I said, if you could put your hands on $100 and you're 18 years old, you can put it into a mutual fund that's getting an average of 18%. Now, that's a little high, but it's doable. And don't touch it. From the time you're 18 until the time you're 66, that $100 will be worth $4,096,000, and you've never put another dime in. So the kicker is to start early and put something in and get a good return on it and leave it. Let the rule of 72 work for you. Uh, Yeah, you could put $10 away and do it every couple weeks or months
Yeah.
and leave it there and let it grow. People just don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that compounding interest will certainly work in your favor over time. And that's the one advantage that you, the college students, have over guys like Bill and myself. We don't have that kind of time, right? But you do. And so you got to take that and you got to run with it. And if you can put a little bit away as a young person and not touch it until you are ready to retire at age 66, like Bill is talking about, then you will have a tremendous nest egg that you can live off the rest of your life and just enjoy yourself. But it takes, putting money away at an early age and not touching it. And that is, I think, the most difficult part because I remember graduating from college and I said to myself, Well, I need to have a brand new Ford Mustang. This was what I needed, right, in order to impress all of the ladies that were around at that particular time. And now I'm an adult and I realize how stupid that was because nobody cares what car you drive. They really, really don't care at all. None of that matters. And had I just taken that money and put it aside into a 401k or an IRA or something like that, then that money would have been worth so much more today.
Absolutely. And
Ugh,
even if it's not in a 401k or an IRA, it's
yeah.
still going to double. The
That's
only difference is that you're going to pay a little bit of tax every year on the capital gains.
right, right, 100%. Well, I tell you what, this has been very, very helpful, and it's given us a lot to think about in terms of, engaging people, like we talked about earlier with humor. We talked about finances. I think that's really important. We talked about leadership in Washington, D.C., and how we can impact change there. We talked about press releases and getting some good PR on college campuses. So there's a lot here for the college students to chew on. So I hope that all of the college students have really taken in all this information and now we're going to put it to use after this episode. So this has been really great. And one of the things that is my weakness is really good food. I love to eat well. And so the next time that I end up in the Perrysburg, Ohio area, I'm wondering where should I go for a great meal?
Well, I got to tell you, I am a fan of home cooking places. And Perrysburg is a suburb of Toledo. There's a lot more opportunities in Toledo.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best is a place called Schmucker's Restaurant. And Schmucker's has been around for 75 years. It's still family run. It's still a 1950s style place. It's been voted the best pie in Ohio,
Ooh,
and it's good home cooking. Okay. And then about 3 miles down the same street is a place called Nick's. It's right off of the interstate, Ohio Turnpike, Interstate 80 and 70. It's called Nick's in Maumee, Ohio, which is another suburb. And Nick's has everything you could ever want in huge quantities. So if you're a college student, I know you like to eat big meals.
yes.
And Nick's is a marvelous place for that. And then just keep driving down the street a little bit further, across the river and into Perrysburg, and there's a great Mexican place called Tequila. So those are three nice places, and you can find something that you're going to like at any one of them.
That is fantastic. Great recommendations. I love those local spots, those family-owned restaurants like Schmucker's that's been there for 75 years. My hope is that these words will land at some college students and they'll go and flood those restaurants with business because I remember, during the pandemic, we lost some really good restaurants that have been around for generations. And I want to make sure that those local mom and pop shops that they stay exactly where they are so that way
Right.
more people get to have that outstanding pie that I know that they have over there at Schmucker's. So that's some really great recommendations. Fantastic. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to join your email distribution list, where should they go in order to join and then connect with you?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.internet-humor, it's got a hyphen between the two words, .com, and sign up for the daily email. It's not a problem. Doesn't cost you anything. It's free to do it. And the book is out. It's called 20 Years of Internet Humor, and it's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes and Noble and any place else that sells books. And right now, it's got a special sale price on the ebook for like $2.99. Now, I don't know if it's still on because I don't know how long it's going to be there. It's up to the publisher. But hey, $2.99. The book itself is 25 bucks, so $2.99 is not a bad deal.
That's a good deal. 20 years of internet humor. Go and pick that up, written by Bill Williams. Go and join his email list. It's the internet humor, internet-humor.com. Go and check that out for the website and for the book. And Bill, thank you so much. You're a treasure, and we appreciate you sharing all of this great information with our college students today.
Mike, it's been delightful. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much, Bill. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Bill, I want you to like it and I want you to share it with other college students. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much. Bye for now.